Siberia, a place spoken of in whispers. A land so large its borders feel imaginary, fading into forests, mountains, and frozen distances. It stretches from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean, across 13 million square kilometers of wilderness. A region larger than the United States and Europe combined, a scale almost impossible to visualize. And yet, for most of the world, Siberia is reduced to a single idea: cold, endless cold, a white void on the map, a land where winter never loosens its grip. But Siberia is not a void, it is a world, vast, varied, ancient, alive. To understand Siberia, you must travel through landscapes shaped not by humans, but by time. And time runs differently here. It begins in the south, where mountains rise along Russia's frontier, the Altai, with their green valleys and snow-dusted peaks. The Sayan Mountains, carved by glaciers into jagged arcs. The Sayan Plateau stretches toward Mongolia, rolling with grasslands that bloom for only a few brief weeks each summer. In those warm months, warm by Siberian standards, the air fills with wildflowers, pink, yellow, blue, colors so intense they feel unreal against the memory of winter. Rivers burst with meltwater, rushing through deep canyons, cutting stone into sculptures shaped over millennia. But above these valleys, clouds gather, and distant rumblings echo along the ridgelines. Kamchatka, a peninsula of fire rising from the Pacific, 300 volcanoes, many still active. Steam vents curling against blankets of snow, geysers exploding into freezing air. Here, the earth does not sleep. It breathes, smokes, trembles, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. You would think such a place would repel life, but nature finds its foothold. Bears roam volcanic valleys, eagles glide over geysers. Reindeer tread migration routes, older than the first map drawn by human hands. In Siberia, everything is shaped by extremes. Travel north and you reach the largest forest on Earth, the Taiga. A never-ending stretch of pine, spruce, birch, and larch. A green ocean covering thousands of kilometers from the Urals to the Pacific. From Mongolia to the Arctic Circle, the taiga feels eternal, silent, or nearly silent. Wind brushes the treetops. Snow falls with a soft hiss. Occasionally, a raven calls across the cold air. But beneath this quiet lies life. Wolves move through the woods with fluid precision. Elk wander through deep snow. Brown bears dig dens into frozen soil as winter approaches. And above it all, winter waits. When the temperatures fall, forests slow. Rivers freeze. The world falls still. Yet people live here. Indigenous groups like the Evenki, the Chukchi, the Nenets. They travel with reindeer, follow ancient paths, and carry traditions shaped by landscapes rather than borders. Life here is not an act of defiance. It is an agreement with the land. Siberia holds more than mountains and forests. It holds some of the deepest waters on Earth. Lake Baikal, older than any other lake, deeper than any other. A crescent-shaped abyss holding 1/5 of the planet's fresh liquid water. In winter, Baikal freezes into ice so clear it looks like solid air. Cracks run across its surface like frozen lightning. The lake groans and shifts. It sounds alive. Underneath lies a world untouched by time. Creatures found nowhere else. Crystalline water. Ecosystems unchanged for millions of years. Standing on Baikal's ice is like standing above the memory of the Earth. But for all Siberia's beauty, winter defines this land. Temperatures do not simply fall. They collapse. What begins as frost becomes armor, What begins as cold becomes something sharpened, something elemental, and nowhere is this transformation more relentless than in Yakutia, a region the size of India, covered in tundra, mountains, forests, and rivers frozen half the year. At its heart stands Yakutsk, the coldest major city on Earth. In winter, the air becomes visible. Fog forms instantly as warm breath meets air colder than -40 degrees. Streetlights glow inside halos of mist. Buildings rise on stilts to prevent their heat from melting the permafrost below. People wrap themselves in layers that make them silhouettes in the fog. Cars run day and night. Metal burns skin. Plastic shatters like glass. Water freezes before it reaches the ground. And yet, Yakutsk thrives. 300,000 people live here, carrying out daily routines in cold that feels almost extraterrestrial. But even Yakutsk is not the final frontier. To reach Siberia's true extreme, you must travel deeper into the mountains. Into a valley shaped like a bowl, where cold air descends and never escapes. Oymyakon, the pole of cold, the coldest inhabited place outside Antarctica. Temperatures have dropped to 71 degrees below zero, a number so extreme it bends the definition of cold. Boiling water thrown in the air turns to snow before it lands. Breathing feels thick and sharp. Engines freeze solid. Ink solidifies in pens. Birds sometimes freeze in place. And yet, fewer than 1,000 people live here. Children walk to school in temperatures that ground airplanes elsewhere. Villagers continue traditions passed down for centuries. To outsiders, it looks impossible. To locals, it is life. Beneath this cold surface lies something unexpected: diamonds. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions carried them from deep underground up toward the surface. Today, Yakutia contains some of the richest diamond deposits on Earth. The town of Mirny sits atop one of them. At first, Mirny appears unremarkable: rows of Soviet blocks, warehouses, quiet streets. But just beyond the city lies a crater so immense it seems unreal. The Mir Diamond Mine, a hole more than a kilometre wide and nearly a kilometre deep, one of the largest man-made excavations ever created. Diamonds pulled from the mine travelled across the globe: Moscow, Paris, New York. What began in frozen ground ended in velvet-lined boxes. When the open pit closed, a scar remained, a wound in the earth large enough to affect air currents. Mining continued underground, deeper into permafrost older than human civilization. And as Siberia warms, the permafrost reveals treasures of another kind. Perfectly preserved mammoths, ancient wolves, creatures frozen in time. Siberia holds the world's memories beneath its ice. Travel across the region and you find roads that challenge the definition of distance. The Kolyma Highway, one of the longest and harshest roads on Earth, stretches more than 2,000 kilometres across mountains, across tundra, across emptiness. In winter, it freezes into a ribbon of white. In summer, it becomes a river of dust. Towns appear unexpectedly, then fade behind you just as quickly. This is a land where even infrastructure feels temporary, where nature always has the final word. Among Siberia's wonders, the Lena Pillars stand apart, gigantic stone towers rising along the Lena River. Formed over hundreds of millions of years, columns more than 100 meters tall. From afar, they resemble a city, a skyline built by nature, an ancient stone cathedral. Up close, each pillar reveals layers of sediment, lines carved by time. They stretch upward like the teeth of the earth. A geological memory preserved in limestone. Standing below them, a person feels impossibly small. Siberia shrinks human ambition into perspective. Travel further north and the tree line fades, forests thin into tundra. The air sharpens, the sky widens. Here, the Arctic begins. In winter, the sun vanishes for weeks. Darkness covers the land, lit only by moonlight and the dancing aurora. The northern lights shimmer across the sky like curtains of green and violet. To indigenous people, they carry meaning. To visitors, they feel supernatural. Temperatures drop so low that snow becomes dry powder, carried across the plains by relentless wind. Life here is minimal, but resilient. Reindeer herds move across the frozen ground. Arctic foxes appear and vanish in the white. Owls glide silently over snowfields. In the brief summer, sometimes only a few weeks, the tundra erupts into colour. Mosses, lichens and tiny flowers emerge in defiance of the cold. But Siberia is changing. Climate change is melting the permafrost. Ground that stayed frozen for thousands of years softens. Roads buckle. Buildings tilt. Long-buried organisms awaken. Massive methane bubbles rise from thawing soil. Craters form, sometimes exploding into giant craters. Entire landscapes shift. Siberia stores more carbon in its frozen ground than all the world's forests combined. If it melts, the consequences will spread far beyond Russia. This land is a sleeping giant, and the giant is stirring. Yet despite its challenges, its cold, its isolation, its scale, Siberia remains extraordinary.